All right, we are back and we are going to do a couple things different just to keep putting out these podcast episodes and bringing in a little bit of history about this area for clients to kind of know. And we thought it would be really cool to bring in some of the legends around here. And one of them kind of brings it full circle. Why don't you give a short introduction of how it all comes together before we introduce him into the podcast?
We're bringing his story to light because we don't want these stories to be lost in time. We would like them to be told. And how I got my start with the guide school with Jerry Mousen, Speed and him started this business together, and I went through that program.
So throughout the years, Speed has become very influential in this area.
Yeah, through church, bringing people to Christ, guiding hundreds of men over the years on hunting trips into the backcountry. He is a guide in every aspect of his life through ministry, leadership, and the wilderness. I mean, a guide to the T. He is the guide of all guides. There's really no other way to explain it than he's a man's man.
That's a perfect description of Speed. So without further ado, we're going to be introducing Speed on this next podcast, and he is going to start from the very beginning of his life and tell it to all the way to current day, throughout guiding, becoming a Christian, teaching guide school to students all across the country, going to shows. We're going to call this the Saga of Speed, and this is episode 1.
Which, Speed, I don't even know your real name. I've never...
You don't have to tell it if you don't want to.
You would like me to tell you that my real name is Daryl?
Daryl is your real name?
Yes.
Daryl Lee Tessier.
Tessier. My dad's name was Daryl as well, and they called him Butch, and my mom started calling me Speed in Whitefish, Montana, when I kept running around and going all the time, and up in the mountains and stuff, and so she'd call me Fast and Swift, and finally she settled on Speed, and everybody else started calling me that, and that's been there ever since.
Well, that clears up a lot of things because over the years, you probably don't even know it, but you're like legend status in the valley. So as guides talking, we have come up with reasons why your nickname was Speed over the years, and I've heard about 100. And that's very simple compared to some of the stories I've heard. It clears it up.
Well, that's a true story.
So where are you originally from, Speed?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll start with my birth. My dad was in the Army, and in fact, my family goes back 5 or 6 generations in the military. Yeah. And we've never missed a beat. I was in the Marine Corps. All before me were in the Army, and then my son and grandson all been in the Navy. But my dad was in the Army during World War II. My mom was pregnant, and her folks were in Watertown, South Dakota. And she went down there, and then she took the train down to Paso Robles, California. And people say, "You're born in California?" Well, yeah, I was, but that's what it was. But then when we got out to come back up, we went back up to South Dakota, then we went to Great Falls, that's where I started at, in Great Falls. But I stuttered really bad, if you want me to keep going on.
Yeah.
I stuttered really bad, and it caused a lot of conflict, and I had a complex for a long time, and a lot of fights and stuff like that. So naturally, I boxed when I was a kid because I needed that tool, apparently, I guess. But anyway, and so they sent me back to South Dakota. And that's where I got into pheasant hunting and duck hunting as a kid and just loved it. My grandparents were both hardcore pheasant and duck hunters. My grandfather was, he had got wounded in World War I, and he self-employed more or less, worked on them old Model A's and stuff like that. But they lived in a house with big underneath was all a place to keep all the food, canned food and stuff like that, and a slop pail and a hand pump and an outhouse. And then the other side of the family, they lived on the other side of the tracks. You've heard that before. And they had electricity and were real nice. So it was kind of a back and forth type of thing when I was there. But then I went to a speech therapist, which had me. I remember she's a big old heavy set lady, and she would come up and hug me, and I just hated it. As a kid, and she just, I was just glad to see you. She'd hug me, but she would have me recite poetry. And I can't remember any of them, but I would recite this poetry, and she'd say, "Slow down, slow down, slow down," and she actually stopped me from stuttering. And I do stutter now and then a little bit. I guess people tell me that, but I don't notice it no more. But when I was young, it was really hard for me because I go, that, how it would do.
Yeah.
And I got a very good friend that does that. And I'm not going to mention his name, but we all know him. You probably know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I do. So where did your family originally, what nationality are you guys originally?
They're Montese, French Canadians, and so they come down into the Dakotas and the North Dakotas.
Originally.
South Dakotas, yeah.
The 1800 times you're talking.
Yeah, Minnesota, stuff like that, I guess, yeah. That's what I understand, anyway. So,
wow. So from the first Europeans into the Rockies, it was your family.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Super neat.
So when you were younger, what was the first kind of hunting you did? Was it duck hunting, pheasant hunting?
Yeah.
Or just everything?
Yeah, it was duck hunting, pheasant hunting, And then we moved around, and we was in Great Falls, and then my dad was transferred to Whitefish, and we was there. And then something happened there, and we ended up going to Idaho. And I was a freshman in high school. When I became a freshman in high school, I got introduced to elk hunting, deer hunting, all that kind of stuff, and stuff like that. And when I became, after I was a sophomore, that summer, actually it was during that sophomore year, I got in trouble, and they put me on probation. And they thought I had a bad attitude and thought I should join the military, which I did. And I joined the Marine Corps. When I was 17 years old, my folks signed for me. And I left, and I went overseas for 2 years and come back. And then we trained troops to go back to Vietnam and went to cold weather training in Bridgeport. But I can remember me and my buddy from San Antonio, Texas, we bought a 22 410 over and unders. And Camp Pendleton has everything you could believe in. It has doves and pheasants and ducks and coyotes. I don't say, me and him, whenever we had a minute or so, we was out hunting. Me and him was chasing around. We killed rattlesnakes. I got a rattlesnake almost struck me trying to get a bunch of quail out of this brush pile.
So you guys are doing all this while you're on base?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, when your time off,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so so anyway, and we trained troops to go to Vietnam. Then we went to Bridgeport, which is in the northern Sierras, and made me homesick for Idaho, Montana, and went to cold weather training. And I always thought, what are we doing in cold weather training? We're fighting a war over in the jungle, but we went to cold weather training, and then I headed home. I got out of the Marine Corps 4 years. They extended a lot of people in my outfit, but I had got jungle rot so bad that they 4F'd me to a tropical zone. In other words, they couldn't send me back to a tropical zone. So I only had to do, we're a 6-year thing, but you're 4 years active, 2 years inactive. And I had my 2 years inactive, which I went back to Idaho.
Did you end up doing any tours in Vietnam?
No. I actually got there. We were there. I got there, but when I was fortunate. They put me on sea duty, even though I was in infantry.
Yeah.
So they put me on an aircraft carrier. And we sit outside of Vietnam flying planes on there, and we were guarding all the bombs and all the planes with bombs on. We ran the brig and all that stuff. But we just sat right outside of Vietnam, and we make cruises to the Philippines or cruises to the Hong Kong or wherever.
Yeah. So you did tours at.
Yeah, I did tours there, but I wasn't on land,
Okay,
even though,
yeah.
and it used to bother me because I was infantry. And one night we were sitting outside of Vietnam, and a destroyer ran into us in the middle of the night. And I don't know how this happens, but it did. And they got these bells that go bong, bong, bong. You think you're being attacked. You've been bombed, you know. And I'm thinking, what am I doing on this stupid ship? You know, I should be on the ground, you know. And then to find out this ship, well, it was a good deal because then they sent us to Japan to do some repairs. And then we went there. And then they decided we had to go back to the States, so we went back to Bremerton, Washington, and then I got mononucleosis. I guess I don't know if you need to know all this stuff, but
It's all interesting.
It builds a story. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I got mononucleosis, and so then I could hitchhike home. But when they started giving me Liberty or the hospital, so I used to hitchhike home, and in them days it was kind of safe, especially if you were a Marine with your uniform on, to hitchhike home. So I hitchhiked home, you know, to Idaho and back, you know, and stuff like that. And then they decided, well, they needed me back on the ship, so they flew me aboard an aircraft carrier, and that's an experience that I would never want to relive because I'm sitting behind this pilot, and I'm looking right down at this aircraft carrier, which looks like a matchbox, and the wind's blowing, and this thing is going up and down and back and forth, and we're flying into land on this thing. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? And anyway, we hit them. They got a big hook that catches the cables when we land. I'll never forget that. Boy, and they opened up the door and said, "Get out, Marine." My hat flew off the end of the flight deck, which I didn't care, and I was back on the ship. Shortly thereafter, we transferred off and went to Camp Pendleton, and we started training troops to go back to thing. And then I got out.
draft full swing. Draft full swing is why you guys were training troops.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, draft was definitely going, yeah. In them days, they would take anybody, especially in Marine Corps. They'd take you out of prison and let you go in Marine Corps. So that's what they say anyway. Anyway.
That's my biggest regret in life, is not going to the military.
Yeah, well, like I say, it was good for me. I had a lot of issues, you know, and still had a complex. And from the stuttering days, I got in a habit. If somebody got in an argument with me, when I started to stutter, I just hit them. And so that's how this would start, you know. And I'm not proud of that at all, but that's the way I was. And so if somebody looked at me wrong, I would think, that guy don't like me, you know. And so I would pursue to be an idiot. And so you go forward. So anyway, so I got back home to Idaho now. That's part of, I'm 21 years old and making a lot of mistakes. And it's ugly. And then I decided to get married, which I shouldn't have did, and it lasted a very short time. It's not Sharon. Anyway, but anyway.
When it's time for Sharon, we need her to put this headset on.
So anyway, and so that didn't last, and so then I'm running around bachelor and doing everything wrong. But then, in 1966, anyway, I go to work in a sawmill, and I've done almost every job in there, and so I became a Jippo car loader, and we worked by scale, loose loading lumber in a boxcar, which was really hard work, but I loved that kind of work, and we're doing that. And this friend of mine, Larry Shoresman was his name. I know he wouldn't mind me using his name. And Larry Shoresman, very, very, very good friend of mine, and he says to me, "Hey, we're going to go up to run some coons tonight." And I'm thinking, run some coons? I got the wrong idea, if you understand what I mean. And so I said, "What do you mean coons?" And he said, "Raccoons." I go, "Oh, okay. Well, how do you do that?" He said, "Oh, we got these hounds and we run raccoons." He says, my brother and me used to run hounds down Susanville, California. He says, and I moved up here, and he says, and me and Joe Whitaker, who we both got hounds, we're going to run some coons. So we took off after work. I thought, that's a good idea. I always like hunting. I'm always hunting, you know. And so we go ahead and we go out there and they turn the dogs loose. The dogs start barking and going along, and I'm thinking, "Whoa, this is exciting," you know. And they take off and they go, and pretty soon they go completely gone. They're out of hearing. And they say to me, they says, "That ain't no coon." And so, okay. So we start driving around, and modern day houndmen might not understand this, but they didn't have tracking systems then. They didn't have shotgun collars. They didn't have CB radios, and they didn't have smartphones. So the dogs are gone, so you just had to drive around till you find them, And so we drove up there, and about daylight, we come up in this draw, and we got up, and we heard the dogs up on the ridge. And he said, "Oh, they're treed." I said, "Well, man, this sounds exciting." So I took off, and I had just got out of the Marine Corps. I hadn't been in so long, so I took off running up the hill. And I beat him up the hill for quite a ways. I was in really good shape, and I got up there, and all these dogs are barking, and they're barking up this tree. And I look up the tree. Here's a great big black bear up this tree. And I'll never forget it. I kind of looked at that, and I thought, I got to have a couple of these. And that started a 50-year reign from that point on, with the hounds. And it was good. It kept me out of a lot of trouble because I was very loyal to my hunting. I didn't let anything interfere with it. Booze, you name it. And stuff like that, and I had to be in good shape to work my dogs, and I was very serious about it. Now financially, it was probably a bad deal because I did it if the season was open. There was sawmills everywhere. I just quit the job and go hunting, and so that's the way that was. And so
good work ethic will always get you hired back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. That happened before. Yeah, actually, George Duncan called me from Orfino, Idaho outfitter. And he says, "Speed, I'm really in a bad way." He says, "My dogs are all sore-footed, and I got 3 clients here." And he says, "Can you come down and help me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be down tomorrow." And I called the boss and told him, "Hey, I got to have a leave for a week or two, and I got to go down." He said, "We can't do that, Speed. We can't just give you a leave." I said, "Well, then I quit." And so I jumped in the pickup, and I went down there, and I stayed down there and hunted with George and filled out his 3 clients and stayed there and finished up the season with him a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was. And then I drove back home, and the phone rings, and it's the boss. And he says, "When are you coming back to work?" So I just went back to work, and so that was a good deal. But
How old were you? Now, this was your first at guiding, I'm taking it.
yeah, I think at that age I might have been 25.
Yeah.
I've been hunting hounds for like 4 years, maybe.
Yeah.
At the time, 4 or 5 years. And so I went down and started guiding for George, which was different to me because it's like it was taking something from me a little bit. I had to get used to that. Because going up to the tree, and I get up the tree and wonder, where's that guy at, and stuff like that. And I had to learn a lot of client leadership skills, which I didn't have zero during that period of time. I probably talked too much, said the wrong things. I probably did a lot of wrong things. And so, but it was a start.
One thing that I dislike about guiding hound hunts is sometimes you have to be fast to keep the action happening for the dogs also.
Yeah.
And when someone doesn't make it there in time, and it just needs to happen at a timely fashion just to keep everything rolling in a young dog's attention span, and you know how that just rolls out, and you're waiting on a client, and then it just starts falling apart, and it's hard to watch. It's annoying, but I know what you mean.
Or you got a lion that's wanting to come out of a tree.
Yeah.
And daylight is really dwindling.
Yep.
And then this guy shows up, and the outfitter's with him, and I'm not going to mention no names there, but the outfitter's with him, and now they want to take pictures. And I tell them, "Oh, no, we got to take care of this." All of a sudden, the lion comes out. Dogs go off pretty soon. It's dark. So now I got to go and find my dogs, and bring them out of the woods.
You're thinking of dogs. They're thinking of their lion.
Yeah.
All you're worried about is your dogs now are.
Yes.
Yep. At night, you're going to probably be on cliff ledges, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So the next day I start a lion, same guy, and I tree it. And I says, "Now we're going to go down the tree. You shoot the lion when I tell you to shoot it, and then we'll take pictures." And so that's what we did.
Can't get the cart in front of the horse.
No.
So when you started acquiring dogs, how did you go about that?
Well, actually, this friend of mine, Larry Shoresman, he had hounds, and Joe Whitaker had hounds, and that's the only two I knew at the time. And there was a friend of, I think it was Joe Whitaker's. The guy had been abusive to his wife or something, took off, and he had a blue tick female that was a really good dog. And it wasn't broke dog, but it would run in tree, really put on track. It really did a fine job. And so I bought it for, gosh, it seems like it was $500, which was a lot of money then. And then she had been bred a year or two before that and had a litter of pups, and they were blue tick Walker crosses. And so I heard about one being a guy had one of them and wanted to get rid of it. And so I went in and bought it from him. That was $100, I think, and I bought that one, and so I started with my first two dogs, and so that's how I started in the dogs. But then I started going to water races and field trials, and there were a few houndmen. There were 7 houndmen in the Panhandle at the time. Now I want you to realize there were no seasons, no bear seasons, no bear tags, no cougar seasons, no cougar tags, no bobcat seasons, no coon season. There was no seasons. And so that's the way it was. So
no
we hunted.
Wolves.
And no wolves. No wolves. Whatever.
Literally the glory days.
Well, you could. We hunted 12 months a year.
Yep.
We coon hunted and did all this other stuff when it was hot, and stuff like that. We run cats in the wintertime, or coons. We run bears whenever we could run bears all the time. We had to be very careful when rifle seasons would start in Idaho, because that was a no-no.
Yeah.
So then sometimes we in Thanksgiving week, me and Sharon got married November 14th. And this was a tradition. We used to go over to Washington and go coon hunt a lot too. But we also would go up there north of Colville and stuff up there along the Colville Indian Reservation, and run lynx cat and bobcats and stuff like that. Thanksgiving week, that was a big thing, or mountain lions. And at that time, you didn't need a bunch of this licenses and all kinds of stuff anyway. And anyway, me and Sharon got married in 1975, and on the 14th, and I took off Thanksgiving week to go running cats, but she was a good wife. And so anyway.
All dedicated houndsmen, their wives, they need medals of honor for putting up with them leaving and just being, feed my dogs, I'm not coming home tonight. How many times have you heard that?
A few. It was fun.
But I did have some problems, before I met Sharon. When I wasn't running my dogs and stuff like that, seemed like it was party time, and that was no good, and it goes back into the, maybe fisticuffs or drinking or chasing or whole bunch of stupid stuff, and I rodeoed, and when you went to I bull rided and team roped, and them weren't good for me because you go to them things, and then afterwards everybody wanted to go down the bar and drink and stuff like this. So I was really getting to a slump. Now I'm going to jump up to when I met Sharon, and me and Sharon met, and we went on our first date, and we went bear hunting, and she shot a bear. But it started off when she was down water skiing, and I come down there, and she was standing by this fire, and a great big fire there, and everybody was water skiing and stuff like that, and I come walking up there, and I said, man, that's a big fire. And she says, that's a hunter's fire. And I said to her, what would you know about a hunter's fire? And she says, I come from Montana. I hunt. So I said, well, and we talked a little bit, and so finally, our first date, we went bear hunting, and she killed a bear. And I was hooked right then. It was bad news, but anyway, it was good news. It was good news right then. But she saved me in more ways than one, because the drinking and the partying, all that stuff started to go away.
Weaned you off of it.
The hounds didn't, but that did. And the hunting was good. We used to be, you want to talk about hunting in them days, the elk hunting, me and my brother-in-law and Jeff, we had a bond. Us three would go hunting together every year. We would share everything, expenses, food. We'd go for, was it 2 weeks? 2 weeks, and we set up camp. We always was elked out in 2 days, but we'd go for 2 weeks. Nobody else could come, just us three, and we killed our elk every year. And we call them in. They had no archery season. It started at the end of September. Elk were bugling, and when you got a 300 Magnum, you go up there and start calling elk in. It's over. It's history, And so that was good time. But there was a lot of elk. There was elk everywhere, mule deer, whitetails. I mean, there was not that many hunters. There's a lot of issues that was in place there, that really worked well.
I'd say a lot of the timber, and you said how much sawmills and things were in operation then. There had to be timber cuts going everywhere in the national forest.
Yes, everywhere. Yes, it was great.
So there was tons of feed and things for the wildlife. I mean, that's major. So were you guys the only ones calling back then? Were there a lot of guys calling elk at that point in time?
There were a few people running around with these little whistles.
Yeah.
The curlicue thing, But me and Tim and Jeff were probably the first ones that I knew of, and I knew a lot of people in them days that knew how to bugle with our voice.
Okay.
And we used our voice, and we get water pipe, and we'd get a piece of water pipe like 2 foot long, and we'd bugle at each other, and when we found where we thought was just right, we'd cut it off. And then we paint it flat back and just stick it in our back pocket. But we could bugle and grunt. My brother-in-law still can. I messed my voice box up yelling at my hounds, and so and in fact, when I talk too long, I get what do you ever call? I can't talk very good anyway.
Horse,
yeah. And so yeah. So anyway, but we voice built. We built our bulls, and we all went down this different ridge. And I remember going down this ridge, and I hear boom. That's Jeff, and pretty soon boom. That's Tim. I don't know if I want to shoot an elk today. I already got 2 down.
You're making this sound too easy.
It was easy. It was easy. No, I wouldn't knock it. It was. Well, I mean, we could, and them bulls would just scream. And them woods was full of, I remember going a place called Timber Creek. This is in the St. Joe River country, which is down towards Orfino, Idaho. And there was a little road went down, and Timber Creek just run for miles down through there. No roads to it or anything like that. And there was an old mine shaft in there, and an old road went down there. And there was a great big rock. And me and my cousin would be up there hunting, and we'd come down there, and I'd walk up on this rock, and I'd sit down on that rock just about dark, and I'd bugle once, and that whole canyon would explode. I mean, elk just everywhere, just screaming down there. I mean, it's just,
oh my goodness,
it's just unbelievable, I remember I was hunting my dogs in September, early September, and I'm driving along and I see a grouse on the road. So I get out and shoot this grouse because, I'm always the thing. And after I shoot the grouse, I'm listening, and this whole canyon below me is bugling back and forth, And here I am I'm taking my dogs out to run my dog. But there was no archery season then, see? And so.
You can shoot them with the rifle, and bulls are still screaming everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of elk then. I just, elk hunting is still really good. And I encourage everybody, that likes it. It's a great sport, but it ain't like it used to be. I mean, I can remember when there was trails up in upper parts of Montana here, all the way to the bottom, and them trails would be fresh. Yeah. And now you go around, and them trails are full of grass, and that's because there's nothing up there no more.
Yep.
Me and Norm talk about it all the time. We go drive up to the Gem Peak and around that way, and drive all the way back down to the back road and come all the way home. Never see nothing. Yeah. You never did that 30 years ago.
Yep. I did lots of thinking about that, and I think it has to do with a lot of the timber, not having timber cuts, in that country doesn't have a lot of feed in certain areas because of, there's food there, of course, but not like a timber cut or a burn or something like that. We've got so good at managing the forest or not managing it at all, or allowing anybody to even do anything with it, that it just gets overgrown, that the vegetation gets too old for that young growth that they're searching for.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, it was, and I think logging was really beneficial for clear cuts for the mule deer,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and feed source. When you got this timber growing up there, and then it's not getting any sunlight, it gets so big that nothing grows.
Nope.
And you walk through this open timber country, but there's nothing growing on the ground but moss.
Yeah.
And so that's not healthy.
No. You find out how much animals go through certain times of the year for a certain like plant, and like a fire plant, how far game will move into a good burn. They'll move miles to get into that stuff, and they do a lot of burning, the undergrowth, after they would do timber cutting. So yeah, I've thought about that, and I've talked with our biologist, and they do a bunch of things with a big game study, and they did overlays, and there was like 26 timber cuts in that canyon that you were talking about in the early 2000s. There's none. There's not one active timber cut in there now.
Right. Well, we get a lot. We've had such a hard impact, environmentalist impact. I can remember when I came back to Montana. It'd be 1979. I believe 79. Yeah. Anyway, and I was a boss down there for LP, and we were having a lot of problems that. And I don't want to knock not Gonzaga, but Missoula. But there were guys coming out of that university putting spikes into trees and logging jobs, and then they'd bring the logs in, and then when they were cutting the timber, it would tear the teeth out of the saws and stuff like that. It was just an environmental thing, and environmentalist thing. It was like the spotted owl. How many jobs were lost, and everything else, people losing homes, everything else, and then they find out it had nothing to do with logging. But all I had was another owl was attacking the spotted owl. So what's that got to do with logging, but they stopped all that logging, and that's wrong,
Yeah, it was ignorant people using their own self-judgment on things, because it doesn't take very long to go spend a bunch of time in the outdoors. That you see a lot of animals. You can just drive around. You could be a knucklehead and not know anything about animals and just see how many are out in logging units eating. But yeah, it's crazy. It would be wild to live through a time where you could openly hunt whenever you wanted, and then start to see all the crazy stuff going on, and the wackos and the useful idiots starting to shut down all the hunting regulations on everything. And we like to put all these certain, it's because there's that many people now. And do you think the number of people has made what do you think has caused, all these crazy adjustments to things?
Well, number one, I think the people are the worst hunters in the whole system.
Yeah.
So they're not hurting the impact of animals, I feel. But I think you can overdo it. But I think the introduction of wolves, which we did not need. Yeah. I think all these rules on bears and lions and everything else, major predators, bears in northern Idaho. And years ago they had a study. I'm talking about clear back in the early 70s, late 60s, and they did a study, and they had this one area that down in central Idaho, and see, I'm starting to stutter, in central Idaho down there. Well, they had a big study on it, and the calf crop recovery was only 15%. So they opened that up year-round, bear hunting, and the howmen went in there. And you know how howmen, and they're very selective, and they take big boars out. They took a lot of big boars out. 10 years later, the calf crop recovery was 70%. Now that just shows you how black bears, people don't realize it, or coyotes in deep bad winters and stuff like that. Now you got the wolves who never tire out, and they can just run them animals and run them animals and run them animals. So all that together, and you got bobcats and you got all these other critters, but they keep trying to protect the predator. And they in the coast of Washington, they've been trying to get the black bears out forever. because not all of them, but they've been trying to get the numbers down because they're killing all that timber and all them trees and them logging companies, and they're not even getting close to it. So, and people say, oh, we don't have many black bears anymore. Well, I got news for them. I think the black bears I think just like the grouse. I think we still got quite a few grouse, but you got 900 people driving down the road. Well, they don't come out in the roads.
Don't sacrifice themselves besides the road.
Yeah. So anyway.
So hunting's changed quite a bit then. You're right. You started guiding. You guided for a guy in Idaho, hounds mainly. When did you start getting into elk guiding? Was that when you here in Montana, or did you do some of that in Idaho also?
It was here in Montana. Yeah. I never did elk guide. Actually, I guess I got to back up on that, don't I? Actually, I went into the Selway, me and Donnie Cooper, a friend of mine, and Skip Pilers went in, and then Donnie was packing in there, and we went in there to assist, but it was just a real short hunt, a couple of weeks we were in there, but other than that, I never did any of that. But that was in Idaho. But yeah, I started elk hunting here. Elk hunting was just like my dog hunting them for a lot of years. It was very precious to me. I didn't like to share it too much, but you know how that goes.
Yeah,
that's what it is. But there's something else I was thinking about. I'm trying to bring it back. Now I lost it, but I'm real good at that. So, but no, my elk hunting guiding started in Montana. And I enjoyed it when I first started. And, of course, there were less people. Of course, that I don't think that was the biggest thing that bothered me. But then I started seeing less animals and less like the mule deer. That really blew my mind when the numbers of mule deer started going. Because clients would come out here from back east and they wouldn't want to get mule deer, And mule deer, they can shoot whitetails back there where they're from, but to shoot a really nice big mule deer buck, that's a really great trophy. And we had some really good, massive mule deer bucks. Mm-hmm. You can go in central Montana and you get some nice bucks. But a lot of them are real spindly. But you take mule deer in this country, and they were really thick-horned mule deer bucks, and large animals as well, and very things. So, but when I seen them numbers going down, I didn't care so much for myself. I've never been a mule deer hunter for myself, but I was a mule deer guide, and I enjoy taking clients out and hunting mule deer bucks. That was a fun hunt.
Yeah, backcountry buck hunting is fun.
Oh yeah, glassing and a lot of times a lot of horse travel too and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I gotta back us up. Do you know any stories about your family's history, because they've been here since the beginning, probably the trapping time, as you're telling me. Mm-hmm. Whenever they were trapping this area, 1820s, whatever. I mean, do you know any good stories or any?
I don't know any other than my grandfathers, and my one grandfather shot for Remington Arms, and he had a very large room just full of trophies. The South Dakota State trap shooting champ for years, and he went national quite a few times and shooting trap shooting and stuff like that. And then my grandpa, the other grandpa, he was just an avid hardcore hunter. I knew that, but my grandfather died when I was a young boy. Had a heart attack boxing, and that's my dad's dad, and then my mom's dad died after I went in the Marine Corps, and we'd been away from them for a long time because they were back in South Dakota, So I only knew them when I was very young, and so I never got a lot of information. My dad didn't hunt, he bird hunted, but when we moved to Montana, he didn't hunt no more. So
we take for granted how easy it is to just get a hold of family now, and wherever they're at, you can
just call them up on a cell phone or FaceTime or whatever and talk. In the 50s, you couldn't just go ahead and FaceTime your grandpap in another state.
Well, I tell you, when I was overseas for 2 years, and I got overseas there. You didn't have cell phones, you had nothing. There's no communication. And on board ship, the captain called me in his office, and I went in there, and he says, I think I was a PFC then, and he says to me, PFC, he says, when's the last time you wrote your mom? I said, sir? And he says, well, there's a congressman in the state of Idaho that just sent a thing to me that you better start writing your mother.
Wow.
And he says, there's pen and paper right there. Start writing. And I better not hear about this again. So, but there's no, like you say, there's no communication. Yeah. And you're over here and you're sitting outside a war zone. And so what are you going to do? You don't have a cell phone. You have nothing. And so how do you communicate, And I wasn't much of a write letters, and stuff. I got good at it because even if it was short, it was always, you write it and send it off. Mom would be happy, So I learned a lesson. I was going to tell you something else too about Idaho. If I can back up just a little bit.
Go for it.
But I can remember when Fish and Game came up to us and we were houndmen, and we'd actually started the Northern Idaho Tree Hound Association, and I was one of the guys that helped get that started. And then they had a Idaho Hound Council, which come out of Boise, Idaho, at that time too, and that was up the road a little ways, and so they come in and they says we want to make a bear season and a bear tag. And I remember we thinking, they says this will make a lot more healthier bear population, and it'll make the bear hunting more sporting and stuff like that. So they kind of convinced the hound club. They did the same thing with lion hunting, and they come in and they to the thing like that. And so anyway, and I remember when they called the hound club in to support archery hunting. And here was this new thing. This was a brand new thing. And so we talked it over, and they're hunters, and so we'll support it. And Idaho Hound Council said they would support it, and we would support it. So when it went before legislature or whatever, so they was going to have an archery season. 5 years later, the archery guys were complaining about the houndmen running their dogs during archery season. And one of our guys went down to the meeting and got down there, and he just got all over him. He says, I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for the houndmen in this state, you wouldn't even have an archery season. So they kind of backed off that. But it was just, it's just like, are you kidding me? We support you, and now you're cutting our throat, But that's how that goes.
No, hunting hasn't changed a bit in that aspect. They cut each other's throat, or
yeah.
It's terrible about it.
So anyway, I backed up a little bit. I'll move on.
Nope.
So your dad didn't hunt. So are you everything was just self-taught, or did you have a mentor? Or?
I had a cousin that's probably, Tony was about 10 years older than I was. And I did a lot of hunting with Tony. And then I had another cousin that had a Marlin 30-30, and he let me use it. He had other rifles than that, and so that's how I started. And what I really did, I bought a Model 99, I think it's E 308 Savage, and that was my first rifle. And that I owned, and I was still a kid. And in them days, you could go to like a sporting goods store, and you could give them $20, and then you pay $20 the next month or $50 or whatever. And when you paid it off, you could lay it away, and you could get it. And I got that. And I killed my first 7 elk with that 308. And then now I'm going to get into a subject that's probably people are going to say, oh, where's he going with this? But I've never been a sniper, and so I've never been into long shooting. But I never had to shoot animals very long. I mean, I call animals in timber. The last few years, I killed most of my bulls with a bow and arrow, and so it goes on like that. So anyway, I got all the way up to a 338 Magnum, and I was sighting it in, and it was hurting me big time. I'm getting older, and my shoulder was hurting. So I thought, this is stupid. So I got rid of it, and I bought a 308 Tikka. Sharon tried to steal it from me, so then I had to buy her one too. But we both got 308 triggers. Now we got it made. We both with the same ammo, and I'm thinking, why do I need a bigger rifle? Because I can do it with a 308. And I know a lot of people got a lot of things. They like to get these long range rifles. They like to do this, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing them. I'm talking about myself, and I don't like shooting at something. I don't even like my clients shooting 500 yards across canyon at something, especially on dry ground. And then you got to take them down the canyon and go up the other side and you see if you can find blood or anything like that. I never was one for that, so that's a different issue. I'm getting on a rabbit trail, I know.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'm guilty. I've let some clients shoot some 500-yard shots, but I think the scopes and things, if they shoot a lot, you can be very good shot at.
I know you can, yeah.
Now, I own all these long-range rifles and I've never killed an elk over 93 yards with one of them.
That's me. I've never killed over 100 yards myself.
Yeah. Doesn't. Do you think that much hound hunting, you pick up on different cues in the woods as a houndsman. You're constantly reading sign all the time, tracks. I mean, just reading everything. That was one of the things that I knew hound hunting. I wanted to be a good houndsman when I went with guys, and I would watch them look at a track, and they could read just something completely different. I looked down, and it's just bear prints going through there. They looked, and they saw how big it was, the width of the chest. There was so many different things that they looked at, what direction, where it was going. They just seen so many things. Do you think learning all that with all those many years of hound hunting just developed you into a lot better hunting skills? Is why you didn't have to utilize long-range shooting?
Right. I think so, yeah. And I've actually been out there antelope hunting, and I've taken, for years I took antelope every year, and I took one that just barely out of the book, and nice antelope. But I remember, Norm could probably tell you the story, but we was up there, and these antelope are there, and we stopped, and they're out there about 300-400 yards. And he says, hey, you can shoot from here. And I goes, no, I'm going to shoot from here. There's a coulee right up there, a draw going up there. Let's drive up there. So I drove up there, and I grabbed my day pack and took off. And Rudy, he wanted to follow me, so he followed me up there. We goes up there, and we goes up through that coulee, and I'm moving along, and I sneaks up over there and looks over, and this buck standing about 80 yards away. That's the way I like to hunt. That's part of the hunt. I don't want to. I love the animals. Shooting an animal 1,000 yards ain't giving them sporting good chance, I don't think. And that's just how I feel about it. And I don't want anybody to be thinking I'm trying to criticize them, because I'm not. Yeah. But I'm not into it. And when I hunt, I want to hunt them.
Yep. Yeah, I think the more the technology gets into hunting, the farther we get away from hunting.
Right.
Yeah. If the animal, I always say, I love the animals to win. I don't know, because I do it for a living. They have a little bit of sentimental value to me. I don't like to see them all get killed. I like them to be a worthy challenge. Whenever we completely trick that animal in his own set of circumstances, and we can trick him and get him killed, then it's worthy of being killed. Then setting up and lobbing rounds over at a canyon across him, that doesn't give him a fighting chance. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, I personally, after archery season, I wouldn't even hunt an elk. I would never, if I were to quit guiding and quit outfitting, and as soon as archery season would be done, you'd never see me ever shoot an elk with a rifle, just because I'd only like to call them in. If they're not called and it not tricked in that scenario, I just don't care to even hunt them. I would just buck hunt. Just go hunt mule deer.
I was just a kid, and I could really bugle. And I mean, I could go all through the tones and bugle and grunt. My brother-in-law the same way, and then we got using a tube, which I magnify it more, and stuff like that. And we just loved doing it. I mean, it was really cool. And like you asked me how many people, we didn't know anybody that did that. Everybody drove around road hunting or sneaking down through the woods, and some of them had them little curly-cue whistles, and they'd blow them, But we're the ones that we had them things, and we stick them in our back pocket, and we'd bugle on through them things, and it was beautiful. And boy, when they come in there and they're screaming and the brush is moving and everything else is doing, and you hear the limbs cracking and they're coming in, that's a whole better than shooting 1,000 yards across canyon. That's the real deal.
Yeah, I agree.
And like I say, man, I told you about that one. Both legs started shaking, and I've been calling elk all my life, and pretty much, And that bull come in there, and I couldn't get the shot, and then my legs started shaking. That's adrenaline. That's wound up. That's excitement. If you can't get buck fever now and then, you just ain't doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should stop it here because this next part of your life is where it really ties in, especially with me and a bunch of other people in this industry. So I think we're going to just end it off there. We've kind of traveled through. We're getting you set up for getting married. You're about to get saved. You're going to start guiding. You're going to meet the guy that got me into outfitting or into the hunting in this part of the country, and we'll go from there. So Morgan's got to cook you dinner again. And we got to get you with the headset on next time because you're in.
Yeah,
this
it's all
next
set
one.
up. So next time you can just jump right in.
Well, there was just a couple things that you asked how he got the first 2 dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. after
Here,
we got-
hang on one second. You got to slide this on. Speed had never even heard of a podcast.
Other
when
way. Turn around.
Oh. I guess.
So I asked Speed, we were eating dinner, and I was like, do you know what a podcast is? And he's like, kinda, but I've never did one. But he did some YouTube.
Yeah.
So we
We
got a
did
good
that.
start on that. So you're going to clear him up like every good wife would do.
What kept going through my mind when he was talking about his dogs is that he really trained dogs well.
Yeah.
And so everybody that he hunted with, they would have a batch of puppies along, and they said, well, we want Speed to have a pup out of there to see how good of dogs they are. And when I come into the picture, I said, we're not getting 1, we're getting 2, because it's a lot quieter that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got, I don't know how many pups, because they knew Speed could train them. And I don't know one
That
of
make-
them that didn't do good.
That would make their pups more valuable, they figured, because if I could train them and they were doing really well, that made it a better dog.
So you were known as getting dogs hunting. I mean, if they were at your house, they were hunting dogs.
Yep.
Everybody says that I speak Joshanese. I have a hard time, I can have it all in sentence form and laid out in my brain, but I have a hard time relaying it through my mouth. Do you think maybe with your speech impediment that you could converse with these dogs through actions and stuff maybe a little bit better, so it was easier for you to communicate with them, is why you bond it so much with them, because you don't have to verbally talk to them. You can just, your actions speak so much through dogs, and especially a pack dynamic like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Connected.
Yeah, and I think it'd just be a nice, and what do you think is a key to training dogs? You could elaborate if you want, but what do you think is one of the main keys with a pup, getting it started? Not so much on the hunting thing, but just on getting it manners.
I think the first thing on a hound, especially, is to have basics. Come to me, listen to me, stop. Just stuff like that. And I think that teach them obedience, load, fetch, stuff if you got a bird dog, whatever. Anyway, anything that has to do with that. But I also think that people sometimes give too much for a dog that's not got that capability. Because just face it, we all have gifts, and dogs all have gifts. You got the hounds, and you got the other kind of, and then you got the labs, and you got the different type dogs. And so, I believe that if you should start a dog when they're a puppy. Mm-hmm. No, don't start them when they're a year old. Start them when they're a puppy. Now, if you get a dog at a year old, I've seen them work really well. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to really train a dog, bring him up from a puppy. When he gets, you start teasing him about things and dragging stuff for him and getting him to get his food and pull it up on a post, and he'll sit there and bark at it. And then when he does really well, pet him out and bring the food down to him. I think having training drags. I believe in that stuff, and then they come and then they get a reward. But I still believe that I believe that your dog ain't going to be no better than you are as a trainer. In other words, you have to put everything into it. If you want everything out of him, you have to put everything into it. And by that I mean you take him out once in a while, and then you expect him to do all the time. He's not going to do all the time. He's going to do once in a while because that's what you've taught him. So I think a lot of houndmen in our modern day area, they don't do nothing with their dogs all summer long.
Yeah, I agree.
So what do you expect? You take them out for 6 weeks and then expect everything in the world on them? Even if it's just roading the dogs, they're doing drags with the dogs, maybe taking them out. I used to go back to South Dakota every summer. Sharon, we could tell you, I go back for 10 days and run raccoons just to get my young dogs fired up and treeing and doing stuff like that. And I think it's really important to make a tree. I believe that tree dogs come naturally tree, but I think you still have to instill that. And put it there and get them working. And you can do that with food. You can do that with whatever way you want to do it, So I think that's important. But start young.
Yeah.
Don't wait until, I want to wait till they're 6 months old. Oh, you miss so much. And it's the same thing with children. You hear me think I'm going to be a children. If you start teaching your children when they're teenagers, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I drug my kid around. It made it very miserable to go do anything for quite a few years in the outdoors. Because he was a burden. We'd go with my buddies. I know they would get mad, but 3-4-year-old Wade, he'd be froze out. I'd take him everywhere. But it didn't take very long of doing that. At 9 years old, he was hunting like a man. 10 years old, I mean, it's the same with dogs. I agree.
Sharon could tell you the same thing with our dog kids. They would ride around the back of the pickup and then everything, and they was out there, Sometimes you could see that they weren't really having all this much fun today, and stuff like that. And go feed the dogs. Okay, get the dogs out of the dog box. Okay, well, they're learning how to take care of the animals, and stuff like that. I remember Michael go feed the dogs, and I told him, Michael, let me tell you something. I've never seen anybody that can check all the waters, feed the dogs before the screen door shuts. And you're already back at the house,
Oh, yeah.
This sounds like my son.
And it sounds probably like what you were as a kid,
So
too.
then I take him out, and here would be this water pan would be about a third full. I said, see this water pan? That needs to be full to the top every day. Right?
Right.
Well, they spill it. That's what I get told.
Oh, yeah. They must have spilled it. Yeah.
Everybody's got an excuse.
Did you ever mind when he was bringing dogs home? Or you just figured it was
with
just
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We lived in Idaho in Post Falls, and I had the basement, and so I was still working at the hospital, and so I'd have to leave him all day. So we'd get these big toilet paper boxes, and had 2 puppies. I'd put them in there with food and lots of paper on the bottom, so they could go pee. And I'd come home, they'd be asleep. They were just fine.
Yeah.
But that's the way we raised them. And then But I have to tell you one little funny story here is we had a batch of puppies there in Driftwood, and we had a house cat. And so he just thought that was really cool, having all these little wiggly things
That's the
to
best
play with.
training cat in the world.
That's how our cat is.
Yeah, and he never really hurt him, at all. But so they come down to look at these pups from the guys from Bonners Ferry. Come down there and Sylvester, right? Yeah. Sylvester goes across and all the pups
cat.
and all the pups are just following him all the way
Chasing him
around,
He gets
And-
up on a thing and they start barking at him.
So the guy says, "Well, I want that dog. Can I buy the cat too?" We said no. You have to have your own cat.
That's how our cat is. They're the best puppy trainers.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
And it's important to start them young,
Yeah.
Start them young.
Yep.
You get them used to that,
He'll wear our pups out.
Yeah.
They'll
Really?
play with him so much, he'll love it. He'll get them chasing him and jumping up on the trees. They'll be wore out laying in the yard, and he'll come over there and pow on them and be like, come on, keep going. And then,
Yeah. Well, they'd be following one another
Yeah.
and one would trip over, and so everybody lands on top of him. The cat's right there to get in the middle of them. And off they go again.
so Morgan is notorious for always picking the best pup out of the litter. If we always keep two also, and she'll be like, even if it's the pup I don't like, she'll be like, this one's going to run the best.
Uh-huh.
Could you do that?
Not so much.
I-
That was his thing.
I always say she just guessed right. And it's only had a 50-50.
Yeah.
I only like them when they're teeny little pups. They love me all the way up until, they're retired. But
Yeah.
when they're little pups, I'm in there delivering
Just
them and
holding on to
yeah,
them. Yeah.
I get all their attitudes, and then he's like, I don't care about any of those dogs until it's ready to train them. So
Time to
I know,
train 'em.
it's my job from the day they're born to about 3 months old, and then I'm like, no, this one doesn't give up. This one is scared of stuff,
Yeah.
So the past 3 litters, I've done pretty decent picking the pups.
We had CB handles, and everybody called me Dog Power. They called Sharon Puppy Power. That was her handle, her CB handle, because she did the same thing. She did take care of the puppies until I got ready to train them, of course.
Yep.
But she-
One of the last litters that we had with Reuben, and he was just had awesome countenance about him, and anyway, he had good breeding, and we watched him, but he was so mild when he was a puppy. Well, all of a sudden he goes, well, I don't think he's going to do anything. He don't get after the cat or anything. Yeah. Well, he treed the cat on the front porch, and the cat, I don't know, he surprised him or something, and the cat turned around and smacked him and drew blood.
Yeah.
They weren't friends anymore.
Fired him up.
And then Reuben became a great dog. I mean,
Yes,
a bear
he did.
dog, cat dog. He was good. He was probably one of my last really great dogs. Mm-hmm. I didn't sell him because I used to sell him when they were 8 years old, and I didn't sell him. And so I kept him, and Norm and Randy Russell come over and took him to the vet, had him put down. I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I had never been soft about that. I could not do it. I could just not do it.
We have a couple of those right now.
I have 2 retired dogs here.
Yeah.
That one out there on the chain, he's 15 years old.
He hasn't.
Oh my gosh.
And he is still like a puppy.
I give
He's
him
going to
the
be around
retired life.
forever.
I give him the retired life. He hung out here, didn't leave the porch for about 6 months. And then that son of a gun decided he was going to go hunting everywhere. And he's senile. He'd be out there cold trailing up along the side of the mountain. I'd have to go get him, and he wouldn't you'd have to mark a spot on the ground to make sure he's even moving, but he'd be boo-hooing around acting like he's running something. I know he wasn't running anything. He couldn't smell a fart, but he thought in his brain he was. He's like,
probably couldn't hear you either. Huh?
no, he can't hear at all.
He can't see or
Gosh.
hear, but he's just muscle memory, just trailing something. So
Well, that's the way Reuben got, and then he was up there in his teens, and then he started to hurt. I could see he was hurting, and I thought, I gotta have him put down. Mm-hmm. And so I called Norm. Norm and Randy come up and got him, and took him to the vet, and they come back and dug a hole and buried him.
Yep.
So that's my buddies.
Yeah.
We were just married, and we got Dude, the other great dog that we had, and he loved to hunt so much that Speed had hunted him all weekend. He was really sored up, so he thought, well, I'll leave him home today. He went down to the gas station down around the corner in Post Falls, and he's gassing up the rig, and he hears a hound barking and turns around. There's Dude, and he's slipped his collar and followed him to the gas station. He goes, well, I guess I have to take him.
But he could unsnap his snap too, and so I'd have to tape up be behind his snap if it was him, because when he got ready to leave, he just unsnapped his snap. I mean, the dog was hoodoo. He kind of scared me sometimes, because he could unsnap himself. I watch him underneath the tree, because you never know. He's a heck of a dog, though, boy. He never missed. I went 3 seasons, and he never missed a bobcat.
That's a powerhouse hound.
Yeah.
You go through a lot of hounds, like hound hunting, and over years of doing it, and it's funny how they all love to hunt, but some of them are completely obsessed and crazy about it. I have one for sure that I can't leave him at the house, even if I know I'm not going to turn him loose. He could be so run down, I can't let him here, because he'll drive Morgan absolutely nuts or chew that kennel apart to get out. Same as your dog you're talking about.
You remember I talked about that plot dog?
Yep, Hawk.
Yeah, little Hawk. Well, I was up there, me and Donnie Cooper, and we was up there for a couple of weeks bear hunting, just guys having a good time. And she in the wintertime, she'd froze her pads or something, and so she would slip her pads, and she was really sore, And so she's sitting there, and I'm looking at her, so we're loading up the dogs, and she's wanting to go. And she's our best strike dog, and I go, well, I still look at her, and she's whining, and she's wanting to go. So I told Donnie, I just put her on the dog box to strike for us. So we're going along. Hawk strikes. Not another dog says a word. She's stone broke. I looks at Donnie, I says, well, just put her up and see if she can get it out. Maybe it's just a cold trail. I turned her out, and she went up the hill, and boom, woo, and she started going, and he turned the rest of the dogs. We had these walker dogs and stuff, and so they go completely out of hearing, and so we're driving up the road, and we got the tracking systems out, and we're going on getting used to the tracking system. All of a sudden, I hear noise coming up over the ridge, and here come Little Hawk with this bear by herself, and she crossed the road. And pretty soon we waited, and here come them walker dogs, and they're going. So we drives on up the road, we're going along. Also, we hear Little Hawk come in, and and she trees. So we go, and then we sit there. It was 3 or 4 minutes before any of them dogs showed up. And then she's sitting with her feet up in the air like this, because her pads hurt so bad. But that was all heart.
Yep.
That's the way she was. Boy, you get heart in a dog, nothing stops them.
Yeah.
When we moved then from Idaho here, we brought Dude with us, and if he didn't hunt every 3 or 4 days, he would pop his chain and off he'd go. He'd go hunting on his own. Yeah, he was crazy, but he was mild. I mean, kids could play with him, but anyway, he was fun.
He wasn't a real aggressive bear dog. But he was like Muhammad, he playing tight, and which I appreciated, because he was my best cat dog too. And but I remember a race up at Priest Lake, was up there, and we was running a bear, and he really good strike dog, and he struck off the box, and they was going. All of a sudden we heard Dude, he was fast, and he's coming, and his bear comes around this ridge, and Dude comes around this ridge, and there's nobody behind him, so he stops. And the bear he went into the draw, and I heard him bay, woo, and he backs up, runs back around the corner. He's standing there. Pretty soon, here come all them other dogs around, and then he went right back in, and all the other dogs gathered in on the bear, and finally they had it treed. But he didn't have all the grit as a bear dog, but boy, he could strike them and trail them and everything else. But he was smart enough to know that he needed help.
We were hunting in the back, right behind the house there at Hauser Lake. And anyway, go around this corner, and it just started pouring, just wet. And he was up on the box, and you could just see him. He was just kind of cowered down like that. He was all cold and stuff. And Speed opens a window, and he goes, "If you'd hurry up and strike, you wouldn't even know it was raining." In the very next corner, he did. Away they went.
Struck that bear, and the bear was up the tree. And I went down there. It was a big muddy thing going down there, and he was treed. And the bear wasn't very high, and it kept coming back and forth and coming up and down like that. And I told Sharon, "Well, let's go. We let this just pouring rain anyway." So she started leading one dog up or something like that, and
I took the gun.
You took the rifle.
The rifle and maybe one dog.
And I took all my dogs and put the leashes in my wrist there, and I'm climbing up the hill. About that time, the bear comes down the hill, down the tree.
Down the tree.
About that time, the dogs just, boom, take off for the tree. And me and the dogs are going down through their mudslide. And I'm looking up right there, and the bear's right there above me. The dogs are just screaming at it. And I'm hollering at Sharon, throw me that rifle.
And I can't hear him because of the dogs.
And finally, I shook myself, and I thought, I'm going to try it one more time. So I got up there, and got the dogs up there. Finally, I got them in the truck, and I got them loaded, and it's pouring rain. And so I headed down the road, and we run into Warren, remember? Warren. Magnus, yeah. Wayne
Magnus. Yeah.
And so he comes running up. "Hey, you been running bears?" Oh. It kind of quit raining then, I says, "Yeah, I just go to the end of this road, and there was a bear in a tree right there." So I'm going to go running. "You want to run?" I said, "No, I had enough running today." So he goes down and turns his dog loose. The next morning, I see him, and he's still looking for his dog. They're stretched from here to there, I never get that.
He forgot the part. When he got to the truck, he was mud from one end to the other. I'm going, "What happened to you?" And he said, "Well, the dogs pulled me around."
So you hunted your whole life, or?
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was the youngest of the family. I had 3 brothers and a dad that hunted, So it was like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, you didn't want to be left behind.
Yeah, no. But,
did you know about hound hunting before, or you just?
No.
Okay.
There was no hound hunting in Montana, I don't think.
Okay.
At all.
So that was all new to you.
Yeah.
When you met Speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that morning when they turned the dogs out, I'm like all excited and thinking, anytime,
Nothing.
Then they just like all disappeared and it was all quiet. I'm like, oh no, the dogs are gone. We can't find them again. But that was the beginning of that story.
Well, anyway. Yeah, that's interesting that you guys have hunted together and everything for
a long time.
50 years.
Wow.
I didn't actually kill anything other than bears until we moved back to Montana.
Okay.
That's where I got my first buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
She killed one every year since.
I learned how, I guess.
She killed with 2 or 3 elk and a bull and a couple cows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 cows, yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll have to do a podcast on all of your hunting adventures together too, because that's very rare just go out. I mean, I go out with him. I didn't know anything about hunting until I met him. I didn't know that people paid money for hunting.
Uh-huh.
And then he was explaining what he was doing in Montana and stuff. So it was all new to me. So he had to teach me just about everything. But now with this, I have to stay home a little bit more to cook and clean and stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll definitely have to pick that back up
Okay.
as a whole episode. Just you guys'
Stuff.
hunting stories.
Yeah. Well, and it's been awesome because just spend that time out there together, and you just learn more about your partner.
How crucial it is, in a relationship to be able to, do something together. It's a little bit challenging, frustrating. I'm sure he's losing his temper, yelling, and you're just. That's how I am when I hound hunt, because stuff is happening and I don't have time to explain everything to Morgan, and she starts asking me. I'm like, I don't have time right now to be explaining it.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of patience to be a hunter's wife, and it also takes a lot of patience to be a guide's wife. But I think the most patience it takes is to be a houndsman's wife, just because. I think his mom is the same way, and we've all compared it because his dad's been a guide, hunter, and houndsman. But the houndsman's wife, you don't even realize what all you do. I mean, I'll be stapling dogs up. I'm taking care of wounds. I'm cleaning kennels when he's guiding, feeding, and all that kind of stuff. And it just takes patience because you're not going to get them to quit.
No.
I wouldn't even think about saying, okay, we're done with this hobby, because it wouldn't
work.
I'd probably he'd probably choose the dogs over me, so I'm not gonna attempt that.
I don't know about that. He knows what he's got.
Well, hounds have a shelf life, and good ones only come around so often, and if you don't hunt them to the fullest potential, you just feel like I left that dog down. So I would say that a lot of the times whenever I was like so extremely dedicated to hunting, even in any form of hunting, was because of being around hounds and being raised around them, because there's only so many years this dog's, because you just go through so many dogs. So they got 8-9 years and they're pretty much
done.
Yep, they just get wore down. They still love it, but they're not part of the pack, and you think about that, so that's why I hunt it so much. I was like, man, one day missed is a day you're never getting back.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I used to sell my dogs at 8 years of age, because they can't run these mountains no more. You can send them to somebody like in Michigan where they're level ground, and that's what I did. I sold 4 or 5 dogs back there in Michigan, all 8-year-old dogs, strike dogs, and got good money for them and stuff like that. But yeah, it's hard ground, hard rough ground, and everything's hard for them. But
all right, I think that's a good place to stop.
Yep.
And then we'll go back in. So this whole thing is going to be the Saga of Speed. We'll get a couple other guests on here and just keep going on, because you can tell a lot more stories. We didn't even break the surface. I know
we're
that.
I want to thank you guys very much.
no,
And
Thank you.
we'll continue this.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
Keep tuning
Sounds
in.
good.
Thanks.
Yay.